Hello. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Feedback and Friends, and I'm super stoked to be here. I have a weird stuff going on tonight. We have a little bit tech issues again. We've been getting away from them for a while, but first off, I cannot get this thing away from my head. So we'll just leave it there because it's actually just a flyer for our show coming up this Saturday. So first of all, before we introduce everybody, I just wanted to do a couple of announcements. We've been working really hard to build you a channel where you get all kinds of workshops, education, and fun stuff for free. So all you got to do in return is just support us. You know, if you see that we're streaming, even if you got something to do and you can put us on in the background, it just helps us build up a crew and gives us more fuel to throw events. And so that being said, we have feedback tonight. Tomorrow, we actually have part 2 of Brain to MIDI with Calvin McCormack. And if you missed that on Saturday, Calvin makes EEG headsets that translate brainwaves into actual data that you can use to make music. So it's pretty cool. He did a set for us. I might play you a clip of that in a second. Actually, since I can't unlock this browser thing, let's just tab over and say hi to Nathaniel. Hello, Nathaniel.
Hello, everybody. Lovely to see you all.
Nice to see you as usual. Can you maybe turn your mic up like 1 dB, 1.5, 2 dB? You're very modest and quiet tonight. Okay,
there we go.
Perfect. Yes. So Calvin, here's a little clip of his set. It was all done. Basically, his brainwaves affect both the audio and the visuals. So you can watch this on our Twitch as well. But he's going to come back and he's going to actually walk us behind the scenes of his setup and show us exactly how he made his custom plugins, how the brainwave data is collected and translated into some stuff that you can actually hear and see. So it's just going to be a short little stream, and it's going to be going on tomorrow around, I think it's going to be, I don't know, the time is up. Look at our schedule. I'm not your mom. Anyways, the last event I just want to announce, actually, I'm lying. The second last event is going on this Saturday, okay? And so this is our very first real life concert that is also going to be on stream. So we're going to be doing interviews, setup walkthroughs, and of course performances by three live electronic artists and one DJ. So if you can make it, it's going to be in the morning for those of you in America, but it's going to be at like 6 p.m. Central European time, which is 5 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. And it's basically it's just pretty cool venue. They have like laser cutters, printers. Basically, you can make anything you want there. It's called Curiosibot, and they are generous enough to let us broadcast from there. So if you tune in, you're going to be seeing all kinds of stuff. And I'm also going to be doing mixed reality visuals. So that's something I've been really working hard on, is learning this awesome tool called Volta. You can see in the background behind me and Natty right now, these are all live generated real-time audio reactive visuals from this program. I know nothing about visuals, but I've just been playing with it and I've been making some super cool stuff. So here's a little thing for the show on Saturday. Oh gosh. Okay. Again, sorry, I mute myself. It gets so annoying sometimes. All right. So, I don't know. What was the last thing that I said, Nathaniel?
I mean, this was after we got as far as the video
Okay.
with the preview for, and then I think you muted yourself, and then you couldn't hear me either because you'd muted me. And everyone was going, "You're muted," and I'm like, "You're muted," and that was that. So,
all right. Anyways,
okay,
you didn't miss too much. The last thing I just wanted to say is that we're doing a sample challenge. So if you've ever wanted to make sample packs, if you've ever been interested in making loops, you want to learn how to do it, Matt Black from Cold Cut, co-founder of Ninja Tune, is going to be on board doing this sample pack challenge with us. We're going to do a workshop on Sunday, April 24th about it. And then a couple weeks later, he's going to come back and take all the samples and loops that have been submitted after the workshop and work them into a freestyle set. So I'm really stoked about that too. But in the meantime, please, if you just only have one time to tune in, April 16th is going to be the big one. So I'd really love to see you all there. And I'm going to be doing all these mixed reality visuals. Like, you can actually see it better when I take away this little browser. So I'm going to mess around with these today, as well as giving feedback. And we're going to go to the very first song in the queue. It's actually pretty wide open right now. I'm about to ping everyone and it'll probably get full, but this is a good time if you've been thinking about getting something in to put it in there. So first off, we have White Raven with a track called Long For You. They are looking for feedback on overall track balance, tonal quality, and volume level. Okay. All right, I'm going to jump in here because I think we got the gist of this. Really, really nice floaty vibes here. I'm going to let Natty actually talk because I know this is kind of in his wheelhouse of sort of dreamy synthwave, but I just want to say that like I'm enjoying the vibe and it seems to go very well with my visuals right now.
Yeah, although some of them look like they're having a bit of a freak out about some of the frequency ranges here. I think overall you have the right idea. Of your sound choices do complement each other. The problem is that a lot of them occupy the same kind of timbral qualities as well, which means when you're stacking them on top of each other, it can be kind of hard to learn what to focus on. So I think you need to spread things out a little bit more, deliberately go more minimal in how you construct the track, so that then when you do reach a sort of peak density, it feels more natural in growing to that point, while right now you're stacking things up very, 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 very fast. There are also a few things as far as your balance. Some of it isn't quite right, mainly because it's again kind of all to do with that layering and the fact that some elements are clashing. Like your snare, for example, it's getting buried massively under your pads and your arps. And while you might want to be going for a lo-fi aesthetic, it doesn't sound like that's what you're aiming for because you have that massive gated tail on the end. So what you need is to bring it up in volume a little bit and transient shape it before you get to the reverb, because that'll give it a crisper kick of your snare and then kind of thing going on. The other thing is to continue dividing up your stereo field a bit more, because everything's kind of just occupying one of three spaces, and when you're trying to create this airy thing, you don't want it to feel enclosed in your stereo as well. You've got to let things open out. And then finally, another trick to play is to automate how your bass comes in and out. Sometimes it'd be nice to just have a little bit more breathing room, so that we actually just sort of appreciate the bass when it adds that heft to it, but also, again, because it's a dreamy track, you want to feel like you're floating and you're actually out there in space, and so you can do that by modulating your energy levels of your bass a little bit more. Yeah.
I mean, I agree with everything that you said. I think the snare just was felt very like dry and dull. It's sort of sitting in the space that it did. So I would sort of do a little bit more parallel compression on your drums, make them a little bit spicier, maybe some OTT, just a little bit. Like, you're not trying to go for that like super modern trap sound, I know, but there's a little bit of a balance, because overall it was a little bit dull. And I want to say like the little bell notes, boom, 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 they get a little bit monotonous after the second kind of repetition of it. So I would really play with syncopating, do something a little bit, different in the second part, just to get us going, because it's got a really lovely floating feel, but it also needs to evolve even just a little bit. And I wouldn't say ear candy in this case because of the style. I think it's a lot more of bringing in slightly different patterns and just really subtle changes, just so that you don't sacrifice the vibe, but you do something a little bit different. Okay, cool. So we're going to move on. Next we got Samuel's aka SV5. And I'm not going to share the comment that they left. It's not suitable for on air. So it was Mimi. I think it was all in good fun, but we're just not going to go there. And I don't know if you're in the chat, SV5. I really hope you are, but generally the rules are, if we don't see you active in the chat, we will skip you and do you at the end. If you are getting impatient and you have more money than time, you can throw us $3 to skip the queue. If you want super deluxe feedback where we listen to the whole song and natty monologues for ages, you can throw us $5. Either way, we got SV5 and his inappropriate comment up next. That was amazing. That's my only feedback. That was just really quite amazing. I don't know what else to say. It was fitting as to that comment that I could not read out loud. I like that like throwback UK kind of old garage kind of bass thing. I'm into that. That's all I gotta say, Natty.
I mean, I liked how you had some of the crunchiness on your bass. I thought that was a neat, interesting mix between how it might program a typical bass and a kick. And it was very stereo, but at the same time you still have the sub in your mono region, so it's actually still quite nice to listen to for sort of headbangy, sort of bouncy music. I mean, I did feel like a couple of, like, it was generally a little bit dry in places. I mean, your hats, they kind of just sort of sit there and don't really extend out into the space much. And while you might not want that constantly, it would have been nice to hear occasionally as sort of a little flick of flair to them. I think that's the thing missing from it. It's just the sort of sparkly tricks that you can play to sort of say, not only is this something that's kind of fun, but it's also really well done.
Yeah, it's always It's always funnier when it actually sounds good. Although I guess there are memes, like Frost used to make ones where he would just like scream into the microphone and just distort the hell out of it on purpose. But yeah, I mean, for home listening, it's fine. But I mean, if I were to like play it at a festival, which I actually might, because sometimes it's really fun to put in like meme track, I would want it to be like mixed and mastered more seriously, So I would kind of play with just actually working on the mix.
Pretty much, yeah.
Usually I'm a little bit nicer than this, but I'm just giving you back what you got. But all right, next up we have James Slack with a track called Bet. And of course, SoundCloud is doing its the Jeopardy thing. I'm going to reload it, and hopefully that works.
Can a man stake his life against $25,000? Can another and cleverer man track him down like a hunter, stalking his prey and kill him within 5 hours? Can you make a bet with death and win and win and win and win and win?
Will you make a bet with death?
Sick. Always super tight. Slack, I gotta say, I really love your drums. They're always like so tasty. Like they're crisp, but they're really fat, and that bass, that neuro movement is really, really nice. I do think it might be mastered a little bit loud. You can kind of see that it's a little bit like sausage looking. Let me just put the waveform here. So, it's kind of hard because it's creating this like over distorted sort of feeling, and then we're kind of missing some of the nice pumping, pushing and pulling nuances, which is like part of neurofunk, right? Like I can tell that it's there. I just think that you slam the limiter a little bit too hard, because now we're sort of just like hitting a wall instead of like pumping up and down and having that like kind of wavy feeling. So really, I mean, my only criticism is just that I think that some nuance is being lost. But yeah, -4 LUFS. And then I start to lose, like, even in my sub pack, it doesn't push, it doesn't give that same thing. It's just sort of like, it's like instead of hitting your head against a wall in a good way, it's like your head is just against the wall. That's no fun. You got to bang it a little bit. Yeah, Natty.
I mean, I think it was especially noticeable in the intro, or I mean, it just sort of blasts in your head in, and then I turned it down, and then I realized afterwards that it would have been really better to turn it back up again once you started hitting with the hard drum bass. So maybe give us a little bit more of an ease in to that before you get really going with it.
Yeah, for sure. Any other comments? Because I mean, it's pretty much a 1 minute whip, so I feel like this is at the point where you're going to do a lot more to it. I would just develop it. I would do a cool kind of minimal section, kind of the tropes of the genre, right? You have a lot going on in one part, like this part, the meat, and so the next part should be like a more minimal, maybe some more percussion focused, little bit of stereo spacing, just really playing with that sort of thing, Oh, he's got a second whip, so I'm just going to keep it going because the first one was only a minute. So, all right, all feedback appreciated. Let's keep going with Slack in the house. I'm loving it today. And SoundCloud is being a jerk to me.
I don't hear anything.
That's just it. There's no sound of running water. The boats have stopped.
Then we're all by ourselves in here.
Listen, the boats have stopped.
Then we're all by ourselves in here.
Damn, another solid one, and same thing I said about the other drums, like that all kind of applies here. Super, super nice. The only thing I really want to hear, somebody said in the chat already that the vocals are a little bit low, sort of overall, and it makes them kind of hard to understand. And maybe you don't necessarily want them to be totally intelligible, but I think they do have to come up a little bit. And maybe you could even just do some harmonic excitement on the top, because sometimes that can actually be a better result than like trying to just bring up the overall gain. Is just harmonic excite it so that you have a little bit of sparkle, and then that also helps the syllables come through a little bit more. The only other thing I would do from here, obviously, other than developing it and making sections and blah blah blah, is taking that really beautiful bass and making it even more warm and saturated and thick. And right now it's rolling, but the drums are so strong, and they're kind of like, the bass is not coming up to that level it needs to be to interplay with it. It needs to be a little bit warmer, and maybe some stereo split processing so that you just have stereo on the top end of the bass. Obviously, do not put it on the low end. That's a no-no. Nathaniel?
I mean, drum and bass has been one of those genres I've been trying to crack properly for ages. Obviously it's hard to judge as well, with it being such a minimal arrangement at this point. It's only in the first minute or so what direction you could take it in. But I mean, I think your second one is definitely aiming for more of a liquid vibe on the whole. And your choice here is whether to extend the vocal components into that second half, or to just focus entirely on your instrumental work. I mean, you could be trying to tell a story, in which case it might be worth seeing if there are any more samples you can use, either from the same source or maybe from other sources, because it's possible to include multiple types of speech in a thing and carry a theme along that way. Or you repeat your existing loop and chuck effects on it. So, you've got options, and that's always a good place to be.
Yeah, tons of options, tons of good sounds. I mean, you always get your ideas down really fast, and it's just a question of stretching them out. So congrats as always. It's super, super tight. And I really hope that you come back with some of these when they're more finished. We're going to move on to Quansil, a track called Overwhelmed. Specific feedback says, I tried to make the track sound dark yet nostalgic. Any tips to make it feel even more so? Okay. Ooh, sounds good. All right. Really, really cool stuff from Quansil. Liking that retro. We got a lot of it's synthwave vibe tonight. It's weird how some nights we get way more of one genre than another. You know, one week it was hardcore, and then another week it was drum and bass, and seems to be the retro futurists tonight. So I think you got most of that stuff really dialed. You definitely have the feeling. You got that kind of dark, edgy, synthy, sequenced ARPy thing going on. The only thing that sort of seems a little off to me is the drums. And of course the drums are the backbone of, electronic dance music type of stuff, so you have to get those right. And the biggest thing is you have that kind of that classic 80s snare, but it's way in the background underneath that super strong, dry, modern snare that you have. So I think that you have the right idea, but maybe switch the balance of them a little bit, because you need to have that that gated reverb snare in the front. And alternately, you can also try actually doing a gated reverb on the dry snare that you have and trying to sort of blend it, and just make sure as well when you're layering snares that you EQ them against each other, right? If you have one snare with only low parts and then another one with lows and highs, you might have way too much low end when you add the two together, because remember, it's summing, right? So I would just really work on your snare, because the wrong snare can just throw an entire mix off. And right now that snare is sort of sitting in the wrong place, and kind of the drums are a little bit disjointed as well overall. I think that maybe putting some bus compression, a little bit of distortion, multi-band over top of it can just pull the whole thing together. What are your tips for drums on this style, Natty?
I mean, well, they're obviously aiming for a darker, slightly grittier sound. And in this one, I think one of the big issues is everything's kind of all reverbed to hell. And one of the things you can do to make drums sound darker is if you parallel process your reverb on that, you can, instead of doing what you do with vocals where you take off the low and leave the higher end as your reverb, switch it around. So you get your darker, bassier bits a little bit more present, and you get your high end just at least on the reverb side, slightly chopped off. And then you keep your high end drier so that you get those transient hits still, and because you still want it to actually fill out the track, but then you're giving it a darker character.
Yeah, totally.
And I
good
think
idea.
that kind of goes for all your synths and stuff too. If you'd follow the same thing of parallel processing everything so that you have a darker reverb tone, I think it'll work towards your goal a little bit better and make everything a little bit easier to manage.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Any other tips for the rest of the whole mix? I know that this is your thing again.
I mean, right now you're definitely suffering from I'm singing my own vocals. Please don't listen to my vocals.
Yes. True.
So bring those up. We want to hear you singing.
Yeah, I definitely
And-
want to hear that clearer.
I liked some of the suggestion of playing about with vocoders. I mean, for that sort of dark, I'm, I don't know, Kavinsky kind of
Kavinsky
vibe.
yeah, that's a good comparison. Maybe reference mix against that too. That's so much more useful. People always forget to do that, you know? Reference mixing. It's pretty simple.
So, I mean, it obviously, just play about with it. There might be moments where you might want to emphasize specific words, and you can use a vocoder to stack up against your main vocal that way. Or you can have it so during your bridge or your breakdown, you switch over to the vocoder again to give it that different character.
Yeah, I like that idea for sure.
So, have fun with it, you know?
Wicked. All right, so we're gonna move on to we are on number. Well, there's actually only 19 people in the queue. So somebody put something twice. So right now, if anyone who wants to know, we are on number 6 of 20. We're moving pretty fast today. We've got artist named Ground and no specific feedback. So we're just gonna put the track on and rage it. And I'm gonna play my little universe of feedback and friends planets. All right, deep house track.
Yeah, let's go.
You make my heart beat out of time. You got me losing my mind. I need you to save me tonight. I'm crossing every line. Think I'm in love with you. Think I'm in love with you. I think I'm in love with you. I think I'm in love. Are you in love with me too? Think I'm in love with you. I think I'm in love. Think I'm in love with you. I think I'm in love. I think I'm in love. Are you in love with me too? Think I'm in love with you. Think I'm in love with you. Think I'm in love. Think I'm in love with you. You make my heart beat out of time. You got me losing my mind. I need you to save me tonight. I'm crossing every line. Think I'm in love with you. Think I'm in love. Think I'm in love. I think I'm in love. Think I'm in love with you. I think I'm in love. I think I'm in love. Are you in love with me too?
that was a really, really nice vibe. I mean, just first off, like that's the kind of thing that I just love hearing at a party. It makes me smile. It makes like people put their hands up. It makes everybody just take a moment and feel good. Definitely super pop, and you know, it's right in the style. It hits the notes. I do think, as others have said in the chat, that vocals are a tiny bit loud. It can be a really, really tough thing to balance because this kind of style sort of is like halfway between pop music and electronic music. And in electronic music, the drums and the bass are going to be higher and the vocals going to be a little lower. And in pop music, it's going to be the other way around. But I think that you can kind of go half and half, you know. Arrangement wise, this is super, super cool. I think you just did it perfectly. Like, I really have nothing to say. Everything happened exactly as I expected. But the thing is, in this genre, you want it to be expected. You know, it's not like experimental where you're just like, oh no, I need something different to happen every bar. Like, this sits in the pocket. It feels really, really nice. Like, it just very, very great job.
I also like that it doesn't outstay its welcome. It gets what it needs to say outwards and then just wraps itself up nicely in a little bow.
Could you please write a book? Like last week it was like, is the journey worth taking? And now it doesn't overstay its welcome.
But I mean, I had one little note about the vocals myself. I think that when you introduced the female singer, you've cut the body out of her voice a little bit too much to the point where it doesn't quite balance as well as you'd hope with the male's version. Like, they're just ever so slightly, she's a little bit weaker sounding, so boost that mid-range in her voice just a notch, like nothing too major, just to sort of pair them up, just because I see what you're going for, but she's already got an airier sounding voice than the dude, so you don't need to be as extreme with the effects processing you use to get that effect on the male voice.
Right. Yeah.
But it's just such a small little bit. Like, most people I don't think would even think about it.
Yeah, I know. I think that just a tiny bit of vocal sort of leveling and tweaking is just all you need. So good job. I would totally play that. And I'm not a house DJ, okay, by any means. And I would just play that track because it feels so good. And because I live in Spain, and I got to be honest, it's really hard to play like angry, bassy music in Spain. You know, it's just like it's Spain. It doesn't make sense.
I'll have to make a playlist for you of just angry bassy music, and I'll just stick on Spotify.
I mean, Ibiza is like 20 minutes away, and I never used to get it, like living in angry, grimy states and provinces and stuff in North America, and now I totally get it. My friends are just going to make so much fun of me. Moving on, we have Monmouth up next, and they said, here's the full version of the whip we sent, not looking just for specifics, just appreciate your thoughts and every overall feedback. Cool, we love this. We love updates. So Call It Off, yet they are a duo. Let's check it out.
We might be better off alone. Last night you didn't even come home. Let myself out, never tried to call. Hoping that you'd miss me, I was wrong. Tried to call it love, but we had no idea the damage we had done. So we just cried and call it off, because we've been hiding from ourselves for way too long. 1, 2, 3, 4. Last night 'cause we've been hiding from ourselves for way too long. Tried to call it love, but we had
All right, I gotta just make sure we got time to get everyone on today. So, yeah, this is definitely we heard this before and we gave some feedback a couple weeks ago. Definitely sounding like nicer, smoother, more balanced. I don't know. I kind of feel like the way that the basses wobble is not necessarily helping the groove of the song as much as it could. You know, like it's a little bit mechanical, like blah, 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 a little too quantized. And I feel like, you know, you're like a band, right? You have all this cool live elements in this pocket. Maybe you need to make your bass play a little bit more in the pocket. Like if these synths were a player in your band, you'd be like, hey, you know, like could you just like stop being so on top of it and like just get a little bit more in the groove. So I think that maybe playing around some of them, the really fast wobbles, I feel like are kind of distracting from the vibe of the song too. Like I think it would be stronger. And you know, I don't always say this. Like sometimes I think that there different parts should be faster and others should be slower. And in this case, I kind of want everything, at least at some point in the drop, to be slow and dramatic. Like almost like to just grind. So it's like when you're singing, like having the bass instead of going kind of going right? Yeah, you know, like just almost like big stabs, big shots. You could even play more instead of trying to do so much crazy stuff with just your bass. You could have like a big pad or something on top of it. So that would be really cool, I think, to hear. And yeah, I really like the rock parts of it. I think that just the drop is a little bit, it's like it's trying to force itself to be extreme dubstep, and really you can slow it down for a lot of it. I would play with portamento and have your bass notes kind of connect and just kind of like have some moments where they kind of go boom, boom, and slide, and really play with the rhythm of that slide, because there's a lot of power in it, and it's almost like you're losing that power by having all these little like bass fritter parts. That's my 2 cents.
I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about the drop as well, actually. I mean, Calaxis has said that there's this FME bass that feels out of tune-ish, but it's actually not the bass, it's the kick. That you're using exactly the same kick, just cranked up a notch as you have during the rock bits, but because you've gone more atonal and changed key into the drops, means your kick no longer fits. So you need to basically create a second channel for it and either tune the same kick or find a different one. And I'm kind of leaning on this side of choose a different kick. Choose a more, if you're gonna go dubsteppy, choose a more dubsteppy kick for your drop.
Yeah, I agree.
And you know, if you have to rework your percussion and all your percussion slightly to make it all gel together, then you know that's the move you need to make. Obviously, if you want to perform this live, you're gonna have to work out how many extra slots do I have to change my drum kit. But I mean, that's obviously the artistic question you have to ask yourself is, you know, what direction do I go to if I want to be able to play it out?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think Schlop said a really good comment here, like, you know, very vocally bass sounds need to fit the vibe, not just use the bass sound you know how to do well. Step out of your comfort zone and really work on the sound design. And yeah, I think just for me, it's all about, one other thing, like it sounds to me like you come from being bands and into being producers, and I came in the same direction, right? I was a musician first and then became an electronic producer. And one of the first things I really played with was detuning my bass sounds a little bit more, like playing with dissonance. And you can use lots of effects to create more of this, like ring mods, for instance, all kinds of frequency shifters, anything that sort of gets detuned harmonics, right? Like when you use FM synthesis and you start like playing with the third harmonic, that's when it starts to get really nasty. And I think that your basses are also almost too in tune. And this is an easy thing that musicians do, because we come in and we're like, okay, like the note is F, so my bass is F, and that's where it stops. But you can play with portamento glides, you can like pitch the down with an envelope, you can use these actual effects on top end of it to make it just a little bit less perfect, and it will sound a lot more badass. It's counterintuitive if you are a trained musician, but it's something that's really, really important to learn.
It's also just fun.
Yeah, and it's also just fun. And they're saying this is honestly our first try at dubstep. I think first try at dubstep, it's awesome, you know? Like my first try at dubstep definitely did not like sound that good in the mix. So well done. I would just really like play now with deconstructing it, getting a little more swaggy with it, and just matching the mood of everything, you know? So next up we have a Q jumper. Thanks a lot for your donation, my darling Chris the Wizard, such a great supporter and always a good contributor. And by the way, if you like what we're doing and you throw us a tip, you help support us keeping this free, keeping it going all the time, and all the crazy stuff we have going on, including the mixed reality shows, Brain to MIDI workshops, Print My Live, all the cool content we have, and the actual ILBC challenge, which is going to be coming this summer. We're going to be doing some real life events. Sorry, I'm just dropping some more news in there. But we are going to be holding these live electronic performance challenges where contestants get samples that they have to use or other parameters, and then they have to do routines, and we're going to compete. We're going to do it live and hybrid. So I've got one for the UK kind of in the works, one for New York, one for Denver, and one for Barcelona. So stay tuned. And if, yeah, we're going to listen to Chris. We're going to give deluxe feedback. And Chris says, are the impacts of this song sucking up too much power on the one? I love the sound, but it's pure rumble and seems like a risk. Also, are the highs too high? There's so much high frequency mayhem, but it's kind of cool. And also, is this the best song you've ever heard in your entire life or nah? All right, Chris, thank you again for your support. Wow, tasty little ending there, Chris. That was very, very symphonic. I enjoyed that quite a lot. I'm actually having a blast doing these visuals. A shout out Volta for making this easy program. I'm loving it so much. Really, really epic. I mean, I love the progression. I love the energy of it. I think it is really great. I do think the rumble needs to be controlled because that is making my sub pack explode, kind of not in a good way either. So it's just needs some cleanup in the super low end. Like, you may not even be able to hear it. I may not even be able to hear it, but I happen to be wearing a thing on my back that goes down to 1 hertz. So it feels very funny when something has too much presence. And so I think that is going to detract. And there were just a couple of other things that I thought about. One of the thing is your bass notes, they were oddly short sometimes, like almost like they needed more of a tail. Like I sort of heard them end and I felt like I was expecting them to last a little bit longer to sort of round out whatever part they were underneath. So I would maybe go and just play with the envelope of your sub and just see if you can't get it to sort of push and pull better when it leans out of the track, because I just heard some little bit of spaces. And other than that, I kind of almost heard like an epic electric guitar, like wanky solo near the end. Like after it dropped again, I kind of wanted it to go like, it's going to be one of those beatboxing nights, isn't it, Natty? But yeah, I think I know that you can hear your sub. It's just like that rumble has that super low, like can't just sounds a little bit funny. But I mean, the bass itself, the sub sounds really nice. Just make it a little bit smoother. What are you laughing at now?
Just the general fact that we always end up back at beatboxing.
Why not?
It's definitely fun. So I've been making some notes since it's deluxe feedback as well. I thought I better put some extra effort in to actually make sure we get some interesting stuff said. I think for me, one of the things about this track is it's constantly loud. And that meant that for me, the most interesting bit as far as your energy changes was during that weird breakdown bit where it sort of slightly pitch shifted and then it got sort of semi more minimal with just the art coming in, and then he brought everything else back in. And I feel like that idea would actually be worth exploring more as a transition device into the rest of the track too.
Mm-hmm.
You can go, you don't obviously just have to go down, you can go up and have it so that you keep constantly changing your expectations and having this slight pitch variation before going into the next section to sort of break it up some more. And each time you do it, you could also then choose one of your elements as the focal point for that section until the next one. And then they sort of, because you've already got a lot of call and response, but you also don't really draw our attention to any one specific thing during each repetition of your main motif.
Yeah,
So
no,
this would be a
some
good
dynamics would be good. You're right, because it is pretty loud all the way through.
And I don't have a sub pack, I just have my headphones, and while I can hear your sub very, very well, I feel like sometimes it bleeds into itself and everything else a little bit much. I mean, this is, again, I think, connected to your comment, Isha, about control. I think that you should have it so that maybe some sections it is just more of a hint at a bass that lines up almost entirely with your kick. And other bits, then you can have it more of a rolling sound, with it, actually being a longer tail, longer sustain and decay of your bass sound. Because right now it's kind of just doing the same thing the whole way through, and it's another way you can actually start changing those energy levels. There's the cinematic impact you kept spamming. I feel like that's nice in itself, but given how melodic your track is, playing about with the melodic constraints of your track would also boost your intention effectively here to have these sort of more rigid sections.
Agreed.
The other thing was mainly just about your kick. When you've got that really, really heavy sub, it's harming your kick to be so rounded. You want something with a little bit of a sharper transient, because right now it's just sort of thump, 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 but we're already getting so much brrr from your bass underneath all the sub-region that it's being masked. So you need to either layer in another kick sample with just the transient of it to get that sharp impact, because it won't reproduce well on higher, worse systems with higher frequency spectrum. than the otherwise. So you need to touch on that a little bit. I mean, you said that you were working on this for the last 3 days or something, and it definitely has gotten to the point where it may be worth taking a break.
Whew, Natty, you should sample that door. Like, I just felt when it slammed, that was like the dopest snare ever. Like, I just wanted to like gate it. Something like,
And, sorry, that was my brother going through the kitchen. But yeah, so like, yeah, it's a case of, I think, take a break, let your ears rest a bit, and then come back and do the final polish stuff.
good point. That is a public service announcement. When you spend 3 days in a row working on something, your ears are definitely full of cotton, and you need to just, like, you know, when you smell perfume or something, you get the coffee beans every once in a while to clear your nose. I mean, you can sort of go from track to track, but after a certain point, ear fatigue, like, there are no coffee beans for your ears that will freshen it up. You just need to take some good old-fashioned time away and come back to it, because I do think, yeah, the mix is flatter than it should be for such a beautiful and epic track. Like, it has so much promise, and I think it's going to be really, really awesome once it's a little bit more like dynamic and crispy and present. Yeah, Chris is saying his ears are shot, so I think we're
I
on
expect
track.
so.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. We love hearing your stuff every week. You're an awesome producer. I'm always looking forward to your tunes. So, I mean, is it the best track you've ever wrote? That was your last question. I don't know, because I honestly enjoy your tracks every single time, and I think they all have like their own character and quality. So, I mean, I don't know if there is ever one best track that anyone ever writes, because everyone's opinion is different, right? But I think
It's honestly cruel to make us choose.
yeah, it is. Well spoken. We got, I love this name. Up next, Couch Chaser. Couch Chaser. I just like hearing that in like a crazy dancehall accent. So they're saying this is a jazzy, bluesy kind of tune with some rock and dance elements. I've been trying to get this ready for an EP and would appreciate feedback on mixing and general thoughts on the arrangement and vibe. It's rock and synthwave day. I'm down with it. Let's go. Wow. What a really super interesting and musically rich piece. It's really quite a pleasure, you know, like you certainly don't have to be a musician to make electronic music. That's part of the beauty of it. It makes it accessible to everyone, but I am always very jealous of people that clearly know their music theory, because I am not among those people, and it's really shameful because I took piano for 12 years and I think I was just very stubborn and I really didn't want to listen to like the academic traditional part, and I just wanted to play, and you know, it was very stupid of me because now I can't really read music, and I'm very jealous of really cool chord progressions like this. Yeah, I love the melodies, I love the progressions. I'm not sure that the rock part even needs to be there, or maybe if it's going to be there, it's like I want it to tie a little bit more, you know, like it has those great kind of rock guitar parts, but then I still want to hear almost like resamples. So that would be my first feedback, is that there are so many great live elements. It might be actually cool to change it up and resample yourself a little bit more. And I don't just mean like cutting up and glitching the piano. I mean like resampling the master, right? Because this gives you a sound as if, you know, when people sample records or they put stuff into an MPC to get that like classic hip hop song, they don't have the luxury of separate stems, right? They have the entire track. So if you actually just record and resample out your entire master, just a little section, and then you chop that up and you start playing around with it, you get these certain aliasing when you pitch up and down, and you get all these other things that you just would not get until you resampled a whole track. So I would really like to sort of bring in some more like classic hip hop vibes and just add some interesting, like, you know, ear candy, but by way of just resampling yourself and creating these like little glitches and things like that. And as Barrett's saying, run it through tape if you can when you resample. I mean, that's like the OG way to do it. You may not necessarily have that, but you can, if you don't have the ability to run through tape, you can at least use some tape emulation plugins. There's quite a lot. I mean, there's like stuff like the RC20 a lot of people like to use, which gives you that retro, it's color, it can give you that wonkiness. There's some like turntable sort of emulation very speed plugins. Right now my brain is a little bit melty. I've been having one of those days. I've just been so deep into figuring out this visual software for the show that like I cannot hold on to any other knowledge. But Nathaniel, can you recall some other good retro resampling kind of tools, things like that?
Well, I mean, another thing to sort of boost that warmth, you could use a tape compressor. When you're before, you know, somewhere in your signal chain. I mean, there's a free one that's quite good. It's called Ferric TDS. I would demonstrate it, but I broke my sound today, so that was clever of me. The other thing is basically run it through a few times if you need to boost the sort of lo-fi vintage feel. You know, you don't have to just run it through once. You can resample as many times as you need to get the character you want.
Yeah, it's true. Multi-resampling. Resample the resample. Get meta. Inception, that music.
I mean, I have a couple other notes as well with this one. I mean, that rock section, I don't think it's a real guitar, but so you might have to play about with how you stack multiple versions of it to sort of make it sound more like it's actually being tracked to get like separately and stacked, so you get that big width, but it's too quiet. And meanwhile, your woodwind is too loud. There's actually a few points once you get to the higher notes where it's actually very, very piercing in comparison to everything else in your track. Your snare is sitting great, your drums are really nice, and then you just got this really loud woodwind, and it's just like, so turn that down just a notch, because it doesn't need to be quite so extreme.
Yeah.
And if you make your rock section more hard as well, I think that it would make it sound more intentional, rather than just this one extra change in a sea of changes.
Yeah, I could agree with all of those things. Natty,
yeah, I just didn't want to say the wrong woodwind, Barrett, but thank you, flute.
The wrong woodwind. Aw. No, you're good, Natty. It's always so thoughtful of you. So yeah, but I love the melodies in that. I think that's a spectacular track. I really enjoyed it. I wanted to play the whole thing. It kept me interested, and that is, you know, the strongest part of it. So I think just making it a little bit more tweaky and textured will really make it unique. So next up we have Zine with All right, just trying out some new things. Didn't feel like making it longer yet because I didn't feel inspired. I may have not have been in a hurry. Just roast me again. I wants to be roasted so bad. All right, so I mean, who are we to refuse somebody's needs on Feedback and Friends, right? We're all friends here. All right, let's check out this whip. All right.
That was shorter than I was expecting.
Yeah, I'm not I think that, for being just something that you barely worked on, it actually sounds pretty good. It sounds pretty like clean, like nothing is kind of out of order. The sound choices you've made are sitting quite nicely together. So I actually think that this has got promise. I would just keep taking it further, and you've got like everything I'd expect. So give me something I don't expect. Give me a few little like micro edits, start making some little change ups, and maybe evolve it into a slightly different thing. I mean, this is definitely, I'm not going to lie, it's not my area of expertise, but I would think it would be cool to do something a little bit more minimal and syncopated in the second part.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can definitely get away with it, even as sort of a poppy house aesthetic, because that's kind of what it is, really, and what it's trying to be. So, I mean, from here, obviously, it's not really been laid out. There's no full skeleton to the track. So your real choice real move here is making that decision of what sort of song do you want it to be. Are you wanting to maybe do vocals, either yourself or try someone else, or play with a sample pack? And then you've got to decide, well, okay, so all these elements I've got here, how do they fit around something like that? Because you've got to give them space. If you want it to be entirely instrumental, then now you've got to work out, well, what's the strongest melodic elements of my track? And do I want them to repeat over and over again, or do I want to play contrast and start building out new bits that respond to the bits you've already written?
Yeah.
Once you make that decision of what do I want this to be, then you can start copy-pasting things up, chopping things out, sort of, really laying it down and saying, okay, I know these sounds generally work together. Now what's the song's point beyond that?
Good call. Yeah, and some people in the chat are saying, Callus says that I thought the kick and snare didn't fit. I would look for a kick that is less clicky and a snare with a shorter tail so that it's snappier. Yeah, good call. I mean, another thing you could also do is do some transient shaping on your drum bus. Sometimes I'll use like a bus transient shaper and just really play with seeing how it sounds when I just pull the transients of the whole thing back to make it a little snappier. But yeah, you could also try subbing out the actual drums. Buttmeister thinks that there's too much drums in the beginning, and so this is all good feedback, because I imagine that some of these people in the chat are much more intuitive with this style than either myself or Nathaniel. So thank you all. I just want to say you are all our friends. Your feedback is super valuable and we appreciate you. So next up we have Luminaire. They says a couple of specifics. Does the song keep your interest throughout? Is the climax chorus section too long or too repetitive? General thoughts, if any, on sound and mixing. All right, duly noted. We will check it out. And the track is called Paper Skin. I like it. And SoundCloud being a jerk again. Yeah. Well, first maybe we'll each answer one question at a time. That might be a fun way to give feedback instead of monologuing. All right. So first question: does the song keep your interest throughout? I'm gonna say yes. I really like the progression. I really like the little glitchy chops. Although I think that they could be stronger. They're like very wispy and light. But I think that the rest of your track is so percussive that I kind of almost want to hear those vocal samples dramatically compressed as well, so it kind of goes like da, 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 like almost accenting the way. You can do that with compression if you play with the envelopes and the timing, and you can get like this pumping, this very deliberate pumping that almost provides a counter rhythm and is really part of the track. So yeah, I mean, it kept my interest throughout, and in fact I wanted it to be longer. I mean, it was only 1 minute and 43 seconds, so I was actually hoping that another part would start. What do you think of that, Natty?
I mean, I think this ties into the second question: is the climax chorus section too long or too repetitive? I think that the main chorusy bit is fine in length, but the build up to the second half, you go straight from your intro into your chorusy bit and then back down again, and that bit doesn't really evolve very much. I mean, you introduce these bell sounds, and I think that on their own they're a little bit too pitchy. But they also don't really evolve in their own right. They're sort of this one static sound, and I actually liked it more when you started playing with resampling them in your second drop section. You know, you had I could hear them, I think you reverse delayed them or something in the back there, so it was like, I could hear them, they were still clearly the same sound, but it sort of changed. But you have no changes like that during their introduction. They sort of just come in, and then you're immediately back into the drop section. So maybe extend that bit out a bit more and start being more progressive with it. And then when you come back to the end of your second drop, that might give you more ideas to maybe make the track a little bit more well-rounded and evolving those energy levels and the base of the song a bit more, I guess, is the idea here.
Yeah, and some people are saying variations in the drum loops, chuck a shaker in, build the percussion up. There's a couple of things. Yeah, I think what were the other questions? So we answered the second one: is the climax chorus too long or too repetitive? General thoughts, if any, on sounds and mixing. Yeah, I like it. I do think that because you have these like thin upper vocal chops and then this strong kind of like mid bass, I feel like there is a frequency range in between there that you could maybe explore a little bit more, like just to play around with that, because you have like the up top and the low, and then there's like I kind of want something else to happen underneath that but above the bass. So I would just maybe play around with that a little bit as well. So yeah, any other thoughts, Natty, on the sound in the mix?
Qualities to it are enjoyable. I mean, just keep experimenting with the delays and the way you're playing with your stereo field, I think, because you could get some even more fun, chaotic effects going on top of that really sort of static bass sound. You know, because that's your anchor, you can go wild with everything else and get away with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's got a lot of promise. It's a good shell. It just needs a little bit more development, which I think you have much time to do because it's not even that long. So good work. Next up in the queue, we have a regular favorite, our boy Schlop. Schlop, I'm stoked to meet you at some point and hang out with you in Denver. I love that. I love your vibe. And it looks like I'm going to be possibly a festival there in September. I think it might even be, I don't know if it's free, but I think it's pretty cheap. It's like one of those day city festivals, so maybe we can rage. This track, the feedback that Schlop is looking for says that hit a wall with the mix. It feels mid-E, so I've never released it, even though this tune means a lot to me. And this tune is a dedication to Charles I, who passed away some time ago. It was quite tragic. So this is a memorial track, and it's really beautiful. I'm looking forward to hearing it, and this is Schlop. Schlub, as always, you're so good at these deep, minimal bass parts. I really love not only the sounds you choose, but the way that your silence and your dynamics comes in and out. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I agree with Barrett. It doesn't actually sound mid-ish to me. It sounds a lot more like maybe certain sounds are just have the wrong balances for what type of sounds they are. And obviously your bass and your drums are always like on point. They're always so clean and yet heavy and not too sharp. It's I could get poetic about it. But in this case, what I noticed that maybe is what's getting the mix stuck, and this has happened to me before too, your plucks have a lot of body, like maybe more than they need to have, and they kind of like take up space in some weird places. Like they're a little bit sharp on the top, and then they also are kind of heavy on the bottom, and then your chords are a little bit thin and kind of sitting in like the upper mids and like lower in a weird place. Like they need to be rounder and thicker in a low mid thing and in a different shape, and then the plucks need to be a little bit airier. Like I think that maybe if you work on the relationship between the plucks and the pads, that's where you're going to find the clue to fixing it, because the rest of the mix sounds like on point. And I think it was just when the through my Sennheiser headphones and Subpack both, the plucks just were like kind of painful and also like taking up a lot of room, and the chords were kind of muddy and also not filling up enough space, if that makes sense. Like it was just a little bit of finessing in the melodic elements, and your drums and your sub are down pat. Somebody said feels like being high, and that he said I have no context for that. So, and then someone else said no trampolines in Scotland.
I know, that was a good one.
So, did you feel euphoric, Natty?
I thought it was quite a good vibe. I mean, definitely chill. Obviously, this is meant to be a dedication to Charles I, and I'm not particularly familiar with their discography, so I'm not sure how close to homage this is to their work. I mean, I don't know whether you've listened to their stuff, Isha. You're more familiar with that
Yes,
circuit.
of course. I've played with Charles a bunch, and it is like very kind of similar in the style. I mean, the minimal parts near the end, that's very schlop, but the rest of it, the kind of atmospherics, and that's a Charles sort of style.
So I mean, well, you nailed it then. That's good. For me, I think one of the things that's giving yourself this too mid-rangey vibe is you're filling out a lot of your lower sub entirely with your kick, all the way through. Maybe it's a point of just occasionally changing up how you handle that and allowing more of your bass sound design to take that spot. It might change your own perception of the track a little bit and fix the issue you feel like you're personally having with that mix down.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that, but yeah.
So I mean, otherwise I don't really have anything else useful to say. Even then, my thought there isn't necessarily a criticism either, but clearly if you're not feeling quite there's something right with it, that would be my first place to look. Yeah.
Good call. As always, really lovely work. This is becoming a really fun radio show. I'm always enjoying everything. We got Spooks. Is Spooks around? Have we seen Spooks?
I did tag them. Yes, they said they were here.
Okay, cool. So they're just looking for general thoughts on their track Mahi Mahi. All right, so we're stoked, and thank you, Schlop. That was a dope track. SoundCloud is just making me load everything twice. So if I start doing my little you can just be assured it's giving me that. I'm telling you, we always have themes, and the theme of this week seems to be like 80s movie slash rock. Like I'm all about it. Like I could live inside Blade Runner all day, fam. Natty, I'm gonna let you go first on this one.
So, I mean, for me, I think that this track is a very, very busy one. And I don't think it needs to be, particularly. Because you've got a lot of really, really cool elements that could stand on their own. All those percussive sounds, they come in and they're really, really strong and sort of make me want to sort of dance a little bit to it. And then you got your lead guitar-y sort of sound, and that's really strong too. But then you're just mushing them all right up against each other to the point where none of them really feel like they have their moment to shine. I mean, you can build up to a wall of sound with something like this, but you need to give us a taste of everything on its own first before you do something crazy like that.
I agree.
Because it's a very, very overwhelming track right now, and it would make it very hard for me, if you ask me in 20 minutes, I'll hum a bit out of it. Well, because I wasn't able to hear so much in isolation, I probably wouldn't be able to do that, and that's a shame, because when you actually do spend some time focusing and listening in all elements, they're actually really nice.
Yeah, you're right. It was kind of like a bit wall of soundy, and you're right about the humming it back thing. That is kind of a good test. I recommend sort of trying that out if you're it's hard for you because when you work on a song you listen to it so many times that it seems catchy and memorable, or it also blurs all together. So I would just try and separate those elements a little bit more and like create a little bit more of a focus, because you need to sort of tell the audience where their ears need to go. So any other thoughts, Natty? Was that it?
I mean, that percussive wood block sound, it's too loud. And if you're gonna have it so it's more if it is constantly gonna be a thing, you've already got a lot of stereo fields playing about with everything else. So chuck that into a flanger or a stereo delay or even a phaser or something along those lines, and start playing about with it more, so it's not just hitting the same every single time.
More cowbell, says Barrett. Got to. That was me last week.
More cowbell, always more cowbell.
Okay, next up we have a very special guest, our friend Max. He's a longtime EDMP Discord favorite, and he says this is not an EDM song with a typical drop structure, since I intended it to be more a bit vocal friendly. Still, I think it's got a lot of EDM adjacent elements that should be easier to critique. Hey, it doesn't have to be like, if anyone has been listening to this show, we have like every genre from Disney to death metal. So we are not.
That should be our slogan.
From Disney to death metal. I think we would get sued for our slogan. But seriously, listen, just one thing to explain for those of you who may have kind of fallen into the Discord and not really had context. Like, the reason that people know us as EDMP is not even really because we have everything to do with EDM. Like, both Nadia and I, we make like pop music, and I do like classical and licensing. It's just because we are affiliated with the EDM production subreddit. And so, in recent years, sometimes we've like gone by alternate names because we don't want to scare away all you people who are making experimental or whatever. Like, whatever you make is cool. We just like tech and we like music. And so that's really what we are. And so, Max, fly your freak flag, friend. Oh, wow, Max. I mean, we've had Max on the server for a few years, and this is blowing me away. Like, I remember when you first came in and the stuff you posted until now. This mix is so like tasty and punchy and clean, and like everything is sitting right where I need it to sit from this. You called it dramatic Arabic trap. That's pretty spot on. I mean, honestly, like if you start making music for licensing, that's exactly what you have to do. You have to give it the most generic name as possible, so that or keywords. You know, actually, you would call it something else, but then you would tag it dramatic Arabic trap. And yeah, I love it. I'm really partial though to Middle Eastern kind of trap stuff, and I think that this could be really, really dope for a vocalist, but it actually stands really well on its own. It's got a lot of points of interest. I really like that like low kind of brass stuff that comes in, and I think that's saying a lot, because especially when people usually make like hip-hop-ish type of beats for vocalists, often it can sound really empty, because it is a bit of a paradox. It's like, how do you make something that is compelling and interesting and a cool instrumental, but it has room, right? And I think that you actually really, really nailed that. I'm super proud of you. I really like the little noise, vinyl noise texture. I like all the little touches. I can hear that you put some love into the mix, and yeah, it was really, really great. I'm blown away, and I'm really proud of you. I'm a proud rave mom.
I remember when Max started out, it's all memes. Everything was super silly, and this is like a really, really serious track in comparison. I'm in agreement with the mix. It actually sounds really, really satisfying on my headphones, and I could imagine it being blasted out of somebody's car and still sounding really good. The only thing I think that I would suggest is finding a way to sort of vary up what you're doing in your second drop a little bit, because right now you're playing everything basically exactly the same as you played it the first time round. And when you've got so much interesting variety everywhere else, maybe have a look at that and see what else you can do to continue that spiciness. Some of these comments are also pretty good. I mean, Chris the Wizard, it's like a foolish foreign dude trying to make sexy times happen, but his attempts are failing. But he's still looking way cooler than
What's
that
it like
might
to learn
sound.
Yeah, totally.
And that does pose an interesting question for the vocals, because you could go with sort of an actual rap on top. But at the same time, I could easily imagine some lady singer singing sort of sultry, dulcet tones over the top of it.
Sultry Dulcet Tones by Nathaniel Wyvern. Next album title.
But the fact that you could go either way is kind of interesting, and may even be worth trying such a thing, with having your verses be in a sort of rap style and then swinging back to someone else singing over your chorus.
Tight. Max, you're a legend. I mean, this is like an example of like, if you actually just bust yo ass, you will get better.
Way.
How does that work? Crazy. Congrats again, great beat. Next up we have Gaspar Poet, aka Zeril86. Just wanted to see what people think. Aim for a slightly melancholic, dark vibe with this one. All right. vibes. Oh my goodness. This is so lovely. I really just my heart, like this progression, this texture. I really don't have much to say except this is just a creative remixy kind of thing. You have so much great space in there. It might be fun to play with automating some reverb on some of the snares, because your drums are a little bit clean from what I'd expect for the style, and it's okay. Like, I really love them. I think it's mixed really well, but it might just be fun to just you could use a reverb like Comet by Polyverse, which allows you to actually morph between multiple reverb algorithms, and it gives you these cool, like, weird aliasing pitchy things. You could do that and just sort of automate it up and down on the occasional snare. And again, that's just sort of a creative idea, not even necessarily feedback on this track, but it's just like when I hear those drums hit over and over again, I don't really want like too many distracting fills or anything to change it up, but it might be cool to just have the occasional snare that's just like, and that also gives you, I call it like a cheap way to make background noise. You can also use like Valhalla Shimmer or Space Modulator, all those weird reverbs that you can automate and that give you like interesting harmonic textures, could give you like this extra layer of noise that you don't even have to grab from somewhere else. You're just building off of what you already have.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I mean, I actually kind of liked how generally dry the percussive sounds were, which normally it would annoy me, but because of how wet everything else is, it actually provides a nice counterpoint. And because of the sort of timbral qualities of the sound, it's not really like they actually feel like they're a drum kit. It feels more like they're industrial sounds, which is a really, really cool effect.
Yeah, it's beautiful though. With so many, I'm really amazed at all of the talent that I always hear every week. There's always like somebody with a first track that's like incredible for being a first track, and there's always somebody really experienced, and lots of people in between. And everyone has their own special magic, and that track really took me to another place. It really like
And I was vibing
transposed
hard
me.
to that one.
Oh man, I love that style though. I just want to hear more of that. And I think, again, I'm a recovering heavy bass addict. I'll always love it. I still do, but it is just so nice to have music for those moments when you just get really like quiet and introspective, and it's so lovely. So thank you so much for that, Gaspar Poet. Next up we have Callus. And Callus is having issues with the breakdown. Says the breakdown in the middle is very off, and I don't know what to do with it. So, all right, we will take special listen to that. And SoundCloud doing the double load. There we go.
You just wanna move, feel the groove. You just wanna dance, take a chance. You just wanna move, feel the groove. You just wanna dance, take a chance. Take a chance, 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 chance.
Okay. I'm really torn on this one because I absolutely love the sounds that you're doing in that breakdown. I love that snare. That really like hollow but crispy little rim shot snare is delicious. I love it. And I love the idea of making it halftime. But I think maybe what's getting you stuck is that the groove is too different, the way that you've arranged your drums. And I think that maybe you need to keep the sounds, but stick a little closer to the groove. Because the thing is, this track is like a continuous dance track. So it does kind of maybe disjoint it. Like I almost want to keep hearing that two-steppy, right? Like just something over top of it so that it connects more with that cool vibe that you have. Like let's click back to there. Yeah, because I love your idea with the triplets, but I think that it's too far from the other stuff. And with the type of track this is, you need to keep the momentum, not break people out of it. Like so, it kind of like wants to go.
Yeah, I think a lot of the action could actually happen entirely in the hats.
Yes, exactly.
You could basically keep those to the original tempo, and you can basically then allow your kick and your snare to keep doing whatever you want to do here, and it would syncopate together and tie the two halves in a nice little knot.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing for me, I think, is that bass that you've got in that breakdown is very constant in a similar way to how it is in the rest of the track, which makes it feel less like a breakdown and more just you've stripped some bits out. So maybe it might be worth as well getting a little bit more experimenting with how you process that bass sound.
Yeah.
And also I was hearing lots of little hints of the old school disco influence that it often pervades deep house. It may be worth using your breakdown to explore that quality more so as well, because you don't really explore the mid-range upper end of it. It's just sort of all still in that bass region and not much else going on.
That is a really good idea, Natty, though. That disco kind of direction. I'm super into that. Like,
I love that sound too.
yeah, no, and I think it would really, really suit this track super well. So, gosh, your ideas. Gold. Feedback and friends. And Nathaniel is the best friend. So, good feedback as always. We got Calaxis up next.
Yay.
Nice to see you, Calaxis. Calaxis was the first Print My Live guest, and I would love to see if you're doing your live thing, how that's evolving at all. But anyways, I digress. There's a track called Need to See You Again. Apparently it needs vocals still, so keep that in mind. And the mixing is rough, but this is the final composition. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I'd love to hear this when it has vocals on it. There's definitely like so many directions that I could see this going.
Yeah, I think that once you start adding that sort of thing, it'll help bring everything into focus more. Because right now your verses kind of just sort of do random things near enough. There are points where it's dissonant, but you know that can be worked with, but only if the dissonance is like a treat more than the main angle of the verses. You know, we should feel almost surprised and sort of worried that they're there, and then you resolve it for us when you build up to that big climax. I actually think that maybe talk to Salvati on Discord. You two are actually kind of converging a bit stylistically. So that maybe he might have some interesting thoughts with where you might take this vocally, because I know he's been delving a lot into that. This sort of very emotional, sort of poppy, slightly gritty kind of thing. The other thing is your piano, the sort of the slightly Rhodesy one. I think you're too reliant on it for all your chords, to the point where because it's a very samey sort of sound, it's not helping drive your verses forward to the point we get to that big climax. Because obviously the climax is really cool. And you want us to keep interested to that point, even with the instrumental, before you add the vocals.
Yeah, I think that like the meat of it is really good, like the part that seems like the hook, but the in between parts are a little bit like they get a little bit boring sometimes. And I think that there's a balance, right? You want to leave room for the vocals, but you need some textural like noise or layering or a little bit more than you have sometimes, like, especially in the beginning. Like later on, there were some kind of interesting things that were starting to happen, but I wanted them to happen a little bit sooner. So I would kind of just work on adding subtle things. And sometimes, you know, if you're writing a track for vocals and they're not there yet, just get some stand-in acapellas. Like it's a good thing to have a folder of acapellas handy of like vocal timbres and sort of tempos that you like. And then if you're building a track and you're waiting for a vocalist, you can just throw the temp vocal in. And then you kind of have a better idea of like what you can build around, because I think sometimes it's pretty hard when you don't have something and you kind of go, I don't want to do too much, but I don't want to do too little. So it can be a good way just using a reference vocal to find something. Any other thoughts, Nathaniel?
I mean, no, I mean, it's kind of too hard at this point to suggest anything else you could do with it, because then, you know, we'd be writing the track for you effectively, and that's no fun.
Yeah, exactly. So next up we have they don't, sorry, didn't mean to assume, they don't have an artist name, but their name is Achemenid on Twitch and Acton on Discord. All right, sorry, that was way too much time.
It might be Achemenid.
I'm not even going to try anymore. It says, they say I'm very new to this, and this is the first thing I've made that I feel a little proud of. I think something I don't fully grasp is mixing and EQing of the different tracks, for sure. And that, my friend, will take you the longest. Mixing has been like, I feel like I started making good arrangement ideas in the first, year or two, but I don't think that I was any good at mixing until like, I don't know, maybe about 5 years ago, and I've been making songs a lot longer than that, let's just say that. So this track is called Spooky Phase by, the SoundCloud account is MC Tic Tac. I kind of like that. I mean, why not? MC Tic Tac? Do you MC though? That's the question. I guess we're about to find out. All right, well, this track is actually a good kind of radio DJ track. It's got a lot of space in it. So I'm going to just kind of unpack this a little bit. This part sounds like Reading Rainbow. Sorry. It really just was like, butterfly in the sky. You have some cool ideas. I think there's a lot of like actual cool space going on, but your notes are a little random. So I think some good tools for you to explore would be some like MIDI scaling plugins. I always recommend Scaler because it's kind of simple, but it helps people of all levels improve their chord selection. It gives you like kind of alternate keys that you could be in, different voicings, and all the stuff that you might not understand yet. And like I still don't understand a lot of it either. They can help you kind of make sure that the notes that you're choosing are actually working together, because there's a few moments where they sort of go out of the scale and they cross in weird ways. So I think before, like, mixing is going to take a while, so just keep making tracks, but start seeing what kind of tools you can explore with artificial intelligence and computers that help you cheat a little bit, that help you move along, and you can kind of reverse engineer when you get something good. You know, you can start noticing the patterns and teaching yourself from there. And yeah, it could use like a really good solid sub. There's that bass that you have, but it's a little bit, it needs to be processed a little bit. So if you want to start learning about mixing, the very first thing I would do is start with compression and admit that, or to yourself, and as we all have to, that you're never going to stop learning about compression. It's one of the most elemental things, and yet it takes years, and there's always new things, and we're all still learning compression together. So fear not, my child. Together we will compress.
And I'm in agreement there. For me, I think a tip would be say you don't want to deal with one of those sort of helper plugins. I always start with the bass as sort of the thing that controls the progression of the track. You know, if you leave it on one note for longer, you can create a static block that then you do things over the top of that might be a little bit more elaborate, or you can deliberately start playing it so your bass is making a progression up, and usually when you're using the bass notes, it's actually easier to tell whether it's out of tune or not the next note along. And so then you can just sort of decide, okay, this part of the track's going up and this part's going down, and that sort of lays out the rough basic skeleton of the energy levels of the track too. And then you can start adding stuff on top and chopping things away from the bass so it's more implied.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's like kind of where, if I'm stuck for how I want to write the track, that's usually where I go to.
Good tips. But yeah, I mean, I think you have a lot of good space choices and good arrangement ideas. It's just about like sort of tying the melodies a bit more and fitting the sounds together, which will come with time. So, you know, keep going with that. Next up, we have another old favorite, XC Fusion. Really talented producer. When they were part of the Crypto Waves contest. I really like their music quite a lot, and so I'm always looking forward to hearing. Oh, it's an Audius link. Bless you. We love Audius. Best quality, very good quality audio. All right, this is a remix by XC Fusion of Warp. All right, check it out.
Welcome to the first
Whoa,
ever
whoa,
Warp
whoa,
Sound
whoa,
audio.
whoa. All right. Sorry, that was so fast. I couldn't even get out of that. But that was amazing. I mean, I have pretty much like nothing to say about that except it like that slapped so hard. It was so euphoric. It was so well balanced. Like it really punched. It was cinematic, like Chris the Wizard said, and it was exciting. I mean, I'm a big fan of your stuff for sure. I think you're gonna blow up if you're not blown up already. So, congrats on just being awesome.
Yeah, I like that a lot as well. I mean, when the Super Soul high-endy bits first came in, I thought they were ever so slightly too loud. I did have to turn my headphones down a bit, but other than that, that was the only thing I could really pick out that was maybe just have one last look over that it might be slamming too hard into your limiter, just ever so slightly.
Yeah,
And it's only at that one point as well where I noticed it.
right. So maybe sometimes you can do some manual gain thing if you don't want to like sacrifice the compression, but you just have a section where it's just a little bit too overloaded. So don't forget that you can always do that.
But otherwise, it was awesome. Really good job. And I like the fact that it's based off something completely different. You know, people forget that you can either take inspiration or convert data types between other things. I mean, this one's based off some sort of NFT image or video, not sure.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
I want to know more about that. Please tell us more in the chat because that's so cool. Like,
I mean, they told me it says the remix. I asked them a bit about the process. Apparently, an AI generated the melody based on the image, and they remixed the AI output.
wow.
But I mean, it's kind of a good point. I mean, obviously, you don't need necessarily an AI to do it for you, but I mean, image to wavetable, text to wavetable. You can convert audio to images. You know, all this stuff. You know, data is interchangeable. And even if it doesn't read the same way across all those things, that can become the source for something entirely new.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's always cool.
Sick. The person we have next up, I can't seem to find them in chat, but it's supposed to be Seven Automaton, but their link, I think it's a private link, and they forgot to give me that generator.
Yeah, I tried tagging them on Twitch, and nobody's turned up. I'll try tagging them on Discord.
All right,
see if
well we'll
they
push
show up
them. We'll
before.
push them back in the queue and see if they show up. But their track is a cyberpunk one too. So it is. Oh, there they are. AKVMQ. So I just need you to get the actual private link because it looks like you didn't copy it correct. You have to share it. So when it's private, but I'm looking forward to hearing it because it's cyberpunk, which is super cool, and it seems to be the theme of the night as well. So I'm gonna give you, if you want, you can just resubmit it, or you could DM me on Discord. We'll come back to you. I just need to get a link that works, and we'll come back to your song. All right, so we're gonna move to Nassim. I'm just looking for any tips that we can share. They say they will greatly appreciate it. All right, so the track is called Voyage, and I'm gonna have to reload it twice because SoundCloud is being mean. Wow, that was some vibes. People are so vibes today. Nassim, that you got me festivaling right there, just right with that. I really, really love that. I'm a big fan of this euphoric kind of Odessa vocal chop style, so I'm definitely biased towards this, but it's lovely. It makes me feel like I'm soaring. I really liked the this kind of side chaining pulsing that I was feeling. It was in a good spot. So I don't really have much to say, except I think that you got to keep expanding it now. I mean, you can go a lot of interesting places with this. You might kind of expect it to just go and do another round, but I would encourage you to sort of think outside the box and just try like, I don't know, maybe a minimal sort of, if you ever listen to like classic dubstep where it's actually dub, there's actually dub in the step, and it's just usually like kind of a very hollow, like lots of reverb, lots of space, and the snare is very like, and then you could have a minimal part where you kind of go deep, almost like if you listen to Truth. I could see it going in that direction, and that would be like an unexpected but really, really cool direction. So what do you think, Natty?
I mean, right now I feel like it'd be interesting to have some more variety in how you process your vocal chops, because they kind of just do the same thing over and over and over again, and with this sort of sound, it's actually better to sound as organic as possible, even though it's an artificial sound. It's still noticeably vocal. And the more micro variations you have in that, the more it'll sort of tie together that this is actually a vocal sample. Or you start stacking things underneath. Like you could run it through a synth and formant filter that, and then play it back underneath the original, and that can create the harmonics that you might be unable to replicate by pure audio editing.
Good call. Nassim,
So,
I hope you
yeah.
keep continuing with this track. I mean, it's a festival track for sure. I could see people playing it. I think that it's got a lot of potential. You gotta do something a little bit unexpected to twist it up, so that it's not just kind of the same old future, because it's got a good groove, but it would be too easy to just play that out, So take us somewhere a little bit different, and I think that you'll have a really memorable sort of track. Yeah, so we're going to move to 7 Automaton, again with our Blade Runner cyberpunk theme of the night. They are going to give us this track that is a whip, quick loop. They're just looking for general feedback. There's an EDM cyberpunk loop I made for a game jam. The song was made for a 2D pixel art heist scene. Cool. It's 32 bars with consistent energy. It's pretty muddy right now, but it's got some Deadmau5 inspired polyrhythms. Okay, Cyber City game loop. Let's go. And SoundCloud says no. I just want to go. It kind of, the way that you framed it, it sort of sounded like a supplement ad, like 32 bars of pure power. Now it's cyber energy. Yeah, no, that was fun. That was definitely a game jam vibe that made me feel like I was sitting playing something like really nostalgic and really cool. And I enjoyed it, but I definitely would like to see it turn into more than just a loop if it's going to be a track. And I like the 8-bit sound, but I think that, yeah, as Stenfiskin is saying, this is kind of missing a bit of sub a little bit. I think it could be spaced out a little bit more. I know the 8-bit mono thing is a thing, but I think that you can modernize it by like just playing with the sounds a little bit more, giving them like subtle textural divergence, and not leaving them flat, like as if you don't have the limitations of MIDI, because I think it's a cool idea, but now you could just like mix it up with some more modern techniques to bring it to that next level.
I was going to suggest varying up filter automation on each of the sounds to sort of allow them to change in quality. The other thing would be to add minor wobbles in the pitch. You can do that through MIDI automation. And that was something even on those old sound trips, they were capable of some loose sort of polytonal things, especially once you started stacking different arps amongst its voices and you rapidly move between them, then you can actually create whole new tones. And right now what this does is, because you kind of just got your stock 4 or 5 sounds that you're rotating between, you're limiting yourself where you don't really need to, because even they didn't need to be limited to those sounds. They could alternate between them. It was just a matter of how many they could play at one specific moment. But that moment was still milliseconds.
Right.
There's a lot more room to start varying it up. And it's a mistake I made when I tried to experiment with this stuff a long time ago as well, where it just sort of made everything kind of static and not all that interesting to listen to sonically, even if the melodies and the actual chords are interesting. You can get spicier effectively and still have it sound authentic.
Yeah, I agree. You can play, like, that's what I meant when I said just like little touches, little tiny crispy fills, and just something a little bit different. So build that out, see where it goes. Feel free to bring it back to us. Loving this theme. Next up we have Buttmeister. Yes, I'm 12, but it does make me laugh every time I say it. So thank you for that. It says, I made this in 1 hour, just wondering about the key and mix. All right. I like where your head's at, and I don't like that SoundCloud is just going on without me. I like where your head's at, but your sounds are super problematic when they're all together, because they're all very long, deep.
Oh no!
It's after 11 o'clock, all right? They're all just very resonant and reverby, and like just, they're taking
They're
up...
long and deep, but they're not hard.
Wow. I thought that I was over the top, and then you just took it up a level.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, I mean, you have a lot of like almost like ship's bell, like very deep and low, mid, and boomy, and like there's just all kind of bleeding into each other. So I think like you can do a lot of things with gates, So gates are just, really extreme compressors. So you can just shut the sound off entirely in between, and then you can duck it up fast enough that people won't even notice. And it might even give like a cool edge to your song and create some rhythm, because right now everything is just drowning into itself. So I know you only spent like 1 hour on it, so spend a few more hours on it. Clean up on ILBC, and just go there and create some space, because the whole thing is just kind of like it's like sometimes my cat used to come and lean on the bottom of the keyboard, and I wouldn't quite notice, but I'd be just sitting in the studio, like, just, I don't know, checking an email, and then this like hum would just start to come, and I'm like, what's going on? And then finally I just look around and I see the cat's butt, like, on the low range of my 88 key MIDI controller. So I'm not saying that this song sounds like a cat's butt on an 88 key MIDI controller, but I think that
You're not saying that either.
I'm not. But Meister, I thank you in advance for your sense of humor. I know we're weirdos. This usually happens after 11 when we've been listening for a while. But yeah, I think just play with cleaning stuff up and playing with gating, side chaining, and other tricks to create space, and then pay attention to the envelope of your sound. Tighten the release and the attack. Like make that sound a little more spanky and a little less Leviathan, so to speak. Wow. Somebody please, maybe don't clip that. I don't know. And get a strike. But then again, some of the stuff I see on Twitch, I'm like, why am I such a goody two shoes, right?
Let's face it, innuendo is totally okay on Twitch. It's non-explicit.
It's literally the only thing that Twitch allows. Okay, so Mol Craig is up next. They just finished this track, and they want feedback on the mixing and structure. Sounds good. And this is a SoundCloud. So. Okay, this is a cool little breakdown here. I think this is what I wanted sooner, actually. But you know, I think it seems like you just need to make more tracks. Like, I know that's very vague feedback, but I think that it sounds to me like you're just kind of experimenting still and getting comfortable, you know? And like the more comfortable you get, the more interesting arrangement ideas you'll have. Because right now your melodies could use a little bit of development. And stuff, yeah, this part is like probably the best part of the whole track, but I think that could have happened sooner. Do you have some specific advice to give?
I mean, it is possible to get away with really, really repetitive melodic tracks. There are even old school classical formats devoted to this kind of thing. I mean, if you look up a fugue, I mean, someone like Bach was well renowned for them. And one of the tricks they used was because they wanted to basically emphasize and re-emphasize the same idea over and over and over again. They would often do things like switch the octaves, so they'd play it once through a one octave, and then they'd switch up an octave or two, or down an octave, and then they'd also change what sounds are playing that melody. So one time round it might be the piano playing it, the next time round you might get the violin or the fiddle or cello or whatever, you know, something different, and then they'd start stacking them in different ways as well, like Lego blocks. So, I mean, if you were to develop this one further and you're like, yes, I really want it to be this repetitive, that's where you go and look next. Is what sort of different or ways of expressing the same thing can you do? How many different ways can you make a sound do something very similar?
Yeah, that's a
before
good
it gets
point.
annoying.
Right, and I like the idea of changing the instruments, because to me that is what it sounds like, is like a sketch with basic instruments that you're going to break apart and put on different timbres of things later. So it's a good way to put it, Natty.
Yeah, so I mean, otherwise, yeah, keep working on new things. Well, as well, the more you grow, you might also find yourself looking back at these ideas and saying, okay, now I have an idea of where to progress that further. Because, I mean, don't delete anything, keep everything.
Hawk it, as you have Monmouth music. You got that lesson in there. I love Hawk it. So it's definitely it's not even Hawk it at this point. It's like even just some large sections of the main parts need to be split apart and put on different instruments. So it's like it's kind of more grand sweeps, I think, than just Hawk it of one
Yeah.
element. You know, yeah, cool.
So, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much. Next up, we have Chiloton, aka Sten Fiskin, and they want to tell us that the drop feels like it's missing something, and the intro is very hollow and bare bones. I'm looking for ideas there. Okay, so intro and drop, both missing things. Got it. Okay. All right. So yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you that it is kind of missing something and a lot throughout the track, because what you have is basically the bones of the track, right? You have your drum pattern, you have your bass pattern, but you need that little textures and space. You could have like a lot of things. I mean, a lot of the time we suggest Foley, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be one of the last comments I gave was automating reverbs that have harmonic effects, and then sometimes layering effects. Like you could automate a reverb in the background and put a frequency shifter just on the reverb and automate that up and down, and now you've just created a whole texture that has been birthed from the elements that you already have. So that's like a good way to just get some atmospheric space and create some interest in the piece. So I would kind of mess around with that a little bit more. And yeah, the pads in the background, it would be good to hear more, and maybe some pluckier high-end sort of counteractive sounds to the bass as well, or even long sine wavy things could work. There's a lot of stuff that could work. You kind of have a nice empty field to plant in now, so all the little tips and tricks that you're going to apply will give that texture that you need to build around the bones.
For me, I think that the other thing to look at is making sure not everything is so on grid. Because it's a very rigid track, and like the bass comes in and it's always coming in at the same time in the same way, and your kick and your snare are also coming in with exactly the same rigidity, and you do have room, as long as you keep returning to your core beat, you can vary up in between those moments.
Yeah.
And get away with it without ruining the vibe.
Yeah, definitely some higher, like mid-high sounds I felt like I was missing, because I just wanted like, and stuff that rings, stuff that has cool space to it, that kind of like sounds out like a bell, and just cool reverbs will go a long way. And there's so many creative ones. Reverbs are one of my favorite things to play with, and delays. Again, Space Modulator by Valhalla, it's free. Frequency Echo, I believe, is also free. So there's a lot of free stuff. We haven't done plugin of the week. Maybe I'll show you some cool reverbs since I've been talking about them. So we'll do that just before we get out for the night, because we have a pretty chill queue tonight. We're actually going to finish on time for once. So next up we have FF4C. Wants to know how the mix sounds overall. I want to include some top end texture in the bass, but there's so much happening in the top end that I don't know how to incorporate it. Fair play. All right. And the track is called Cyber. Everybody, Cyber! It is Cyber Week. Excellent.
I thought only that's November, sorry.
Love me harder,
All right. So great vibe. I'm loving the drum and bass again. I don't know. Moving to Europe has really kind of put me back into appreciation of certain genres that in the US are not as prominent, you know? Like I played drum and bass for a long time and maybe got a little bit overdone on it. So I'm now appreciating again after a nice long break. So I really like that. That has a nice roll to it, but overall with the mix, I think you can use some dynamic EQ to pull in the high end on certain things. There's always a moment in the episode where we mention dynamic EQ. It's the other drinking game. Dynamic EQ would help pull in some of the high end so that you can control it, because there's a few moments where it's a little bit much, but overall it's okay. But I really think my issue with this mix is the bass. It's a great sound. I love that rolling classic sound, but it's not pushing through forward enough. So it needs like some side chaining, some compression, maybe some, with you want to include top end texture. You absolutely need to like some higher sizzle and maybe even a little bit of edge. And I think you can fit that in there actually, but it's not just that there's stuff happening in the top end. There's a lot of kind of low, mid, watery stuff that you could notch out. So I would go and do some really careful EQing and make it dynamic so that as the pitch of the bass changes, the EQ control follows it. That's the best part. That's the whole point of dynamic EQ, right? So I think it's just about controlling everything and just pushing that bass forward so that it has that crispy definition and it pushes into your chest more. And I think that a lot of that is side chain envelopes. With drum and bass, it's so fast, so it has to be a very quick one, but you still can shape it. You can pay attention to like the knee and things like that and the attack and release, right? So shape that a little bit more and clarify it and bring it up in the mix. And then Natty?
I mean, for me, there was a moment where your sub bass thing sounded a little bit like it was going out of tune with everything else. And I think that in progression, that is fine, but I'd like everything else above it to perhaps mirror that change.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, then it, then it feels more deliberate than right now. It's sort of just like the bass is doing its own thing and everything else is kind of running independently of that.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe have a look at what notes you're using on everything else during those moments and just sort of nudge them in either direction a little bit. Really, you can amp up that tension a bit more.
Yeah. Good call. I'm not sure about this next one. It's a Spotify link, which means it released. I would like Tricky Nick is Tricky Nick around?
They're on the Discord.
So Nick, the thing is about release tracks is like are you certain about the terms that you released it under? Because the other day we had this guy Disc, and he played something that was released and it was his own track, and then we got this like massive like copyright strike in over 250 territories because it was something like a DistroKid distributor. But you can choose options about what happens with your music, whether you kind of allow like a Creative Commons or attribution or nothing at all. And like this guy, I guess maybe had not paid attention, but it was a massive strike, and so we really don't want to get those. So I need you to before I can play this track, I need you to kind of confirm to me that this is not going to get us a massive strike. And so I'll come back to you. I'm going to play the next person, which is Yeah, I'm Here to Help. And they say, anything, be harsh. I want this song to be the best that it can. All right.
Ooh, just listen? Are we gon' be just sitting here all night? We've been having at it all day. Are we just gonna tough this out all day? Well, can't you see, can't you see how I'm on your side? Oh, there's got to be another way. Oh, baby, we got to take this all the way. Oh, baby, we got this if I'm just by your side. Oh, baby, I know we'll find no time, but it's gonna be okay. Ooh, baby, let's just take some time, and that's okay.
Oh my God. So much talent in here tonight. What is going on? I am just loving this retro, funky. This is like making me feel so good. I gotta tell y'all, it's been uncharacteristically gloomy in Valencia for the last few weeks. And I think I've been getting a bit spoiled by getting sun and 24 degrees in January because it's been like solidly gray and raining except for like one day for the last month, and this is just making me feel sunshine again. So great job. I mean, my nitpick would just be a little bit on the vocals. They're great. I love the, like, is that you singing? Who's singing?
I'm very curious about that myself.
Yeah, really great vibe, great songwriting. Like, I really love the melodies. I just think that what you could do if you want to make this totally pro, this is a difference kind of between vocal production at home. I still got the hearts on, that's how much I liked it. Is that you, when you're doing it pro for commercial production, you do like the most tiny little micro moves of timing just to like, it's kind of like auto tuning, right? But it's time tuning just to make them super, super tight, because your melodies are like perfect and your tone is really great. But I think that because of that cool swing and groove, sometimes your vocals need to swing a little bit tighter, like da, 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 da. And if you ever want inspiration, listen to like tapes of Michael Jackson practicing. That really got me like on a different vibe for a while. And I you know, obviously was just like one of the greatest voices of all time, no pressure or anything, but it's more like the way every single breath is super tight in rhythm, and you can hear a beat, and he would just be a click track by himself, you know. And the most touching one is when he's doing this, there's this court case where he was trying to explain how he got the melody for one of his songs, and there was a copyright sort of squaffle over somebody claiming that he stole it from them, and he's in the courtroom and he's just talking. Look it up, it's just incredible. It's mesmerizing, because he'll be like, oh, so I wrote this part and it was like and he's just breathing and doing it, and it's so percussive, and you can just hear every beat, right? And that's kind of how I want you to sound, is to just relax into the track a little bit and just like punctuate, right? And sort of almost like self-compression in a way, because you like lean in and out of the mic and you cause your body to jerk a little bit, and you get like, you use your physical body to just like slam yourself into the pocket. And I think that will take your track to like absolutely incredible level. So part of it could be like, maybe you could sing it, but you could also just manually do those tiny adjustments, because everybody does it, you know. It's kind of like this standard now is the same with tuning. Like, if you listen to music from back in the 60s, people get so out of tune sometimes and people don't mind as much. But now that everything gets doctored a little, it's, unless it's like folk music or kind of more earthy styles, it really gets like, you have to just be a certain way, and your tuning is great and everything else. So that would be the one thing. And the other thing would be with the reverb, EQ your reverb maybe a little bit more. You could even dynamically EQ your reverb. Whoa.
We're back there again.
Whoa. Because there's just points when your voice and the reverb, just certain pitches, it gets really resonant, and it kind of, you know, Barrett in the chat was talking about the vocals having a slight mumbly sound. I think a part of it could be because the resonance of the reverb is overtaking the syllables of your voice a little bit, right? Because right now, like, if I lean in like really close into the mic and you get that like Billie Eilish ASMR effect.
Aren't we ready for this?
Ooh, yeah, you're losing that because the reverb is sort of masking and coming like on top of your voice, sort of like coating it in a little bit of mud. So EQ your reverb, and I think that will help. But I mean, I have no comments on like the beat, and the songwriting is so dope. Yeah.
I have one more tip to extend on one of yours. I mean, one of the other things you can do is obviously you got doctoring it a little bit, but you can also use the doctored version as a guide for yourself. This is something I actually do sometimes when I'm in the middle of writing and I'm not sure exactly which note I'd like to hit. And obviously when I record it a couple of times when I'm still working that, you can't songwrite and sing at the same time. They don't really work when you're trying to lay out that bones and get it to fit. So what I'll do sometimes is I'll end up going in, pitch correcting, and then singing over the top of that afterwards and using that as my new take. But you can do the same with your timings. You can shift it around and then use that as your match. You don't have to run it all the calculations on the fly.
Yeah, exactly. I love the vocals though. I love the sound of them. I love like, yeah, it's just very, very vibes. So
Good job.
quite excellent. All right, we're gonna wait. The jury's still out whether that track is gonna get us a copyright strike. I'm just after last week and being like, your thing has had a strike in 250 countries. I'm kind of like, ugh. So I don't know if you have anything that's unreleased. It would just be a little bit easier to be comfortable because if we get too many strikes, we get in trouble. We do not like getting in trouble. So we're just going to listen. White Raven threw in another track, and we do have time. So just general feedback, and then we'll wait and see if we can play this track. I mean, Nick, we really want to hear your music. I just want to make sure that it does not sting us. Okay, so we're going to play White Raven again and check out this tune. If we can load the link. SoundCloud is being temperamental. And it's not even loading the page. That's a new level of SoundCloud. So, Natty, do you have anything new?
No, I mean, I've actually been utterly swamped with work and holiday planning and technical issues in the past week.
Aww.
So, I mean, I've actually not really spent much time in my DAW at all, which is annoying. I mean, I've got a day off tomorrow that now I've got all that sort of stuff out of the way. I'm hoping I'll be able to actually spend time working on music for once.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I am going to do plug-in of the week.
Yay.
Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Okay, so we didn't actually have a specific plugin, but since we've been talking a lot about automating reverbs, I thought it might be cool to show you all a little bit exactly how cool that can sound. And I'm going to do it with Valhalla Shimmer. So why don't we just make that the plugin of the week? Shall we? Oh, my mouse pad is going crazy.
Can you automate my favorite, the favorite control, the feedback? I love to.
Oh, yeah.
That's my favorite thing to automate.
So I'm gonna let's do like a phrase or something, from my sample pack, which shouts out to people still keep buying it. I really, really appreciate it. It's super cool. I want to make another one. So maybe later this year when ILBC has done a few rounds and we're taking the winter, I'll go and record some more stuff. So let's find something to throw in. These are too happy. Okay, cool. We'll take that one.
Spooky.
So, and I'm going to just make a long loop with a lot of space so we can do something cool with this reverb. And then we're going to go and load up Valhalla Shimmer. Hans Shimmer. Valhalla Shimmer. I love the way their plugins look too. They are all so aesthetic. So it's got a bunch of different things, right? There's a reverb mode. It's got big stereo, medium, and small stereo. So right off the bat, you have like a really nice stereo effect on your reverb. I'm going to should we go for big? All
Yes.
right. So we're just going to I'm going to keep everything. I'm going to set this to 0 so you can't hear that part yet. but I just want you to hear, and I'm going to low cut it. And this is something, always low cut your reverb. I don't even have to listen to it to say I don't really want below 300 hertz. Okay. It's got different pitch modes because it adds a different harmonic. It adds notes. And so this shift that I just set to 0, that's a pitch shift. So you can have single reversing pitch shift reverb or dual. Yeah. And it's got a bright and dark color mode, but I just want you to listen to this big stereo for a second. Hear that nice little harmonic hiss? It's so cool, right? Now I'm going to turn the feedback up so you can actually hear a bit more. We got this really nice tail, right? And now I'm going to shift it back up an octave, and it's going to make this beautiful pad in the background. Yeah, and we can just keep extending this. We can make the size bigger. Let's change the pitch mode to single reverse. Now you can automate parameters like this, and you can create an interesting texture. So pitch shifted.
Yes.
Yeah, right. And we can also automate to make a good sound design. Right. What you want to do is you want to balance. So if you move the mix up, maybe you move another factor. So we can actually kind of just make a cool part where we leave it clear at the beginning. Right. We move the tail. We change the envelope of the automation so that it's easing in a certain way, and we can really engineer the sound. Like we can pull it down. So now I've got the shape of the mix. And then I'm going to add a lane of automation and play with the pitch shift. And we're going to just, like, as this goes on, we're going to just shift it all the way up. And then we're going to go in and maybe the size as well. We can automate up. And just the more stuff you automate, you start to just get this, like, this texture, right? So
So this is stuff I love using for transitions.
exactly, transitions or edits, or just like you could resample that. So we talked about resampling earlier, but that's such an easy thing to do. And in Ableton, you can just set it to the resampling bus, and it just records everything. So you can just record that. Whoops, I need to hit record. Yeah. Right? So now I can just mute this, and now I can resample this. I can cut it up. In Ableton you can do all this fun things with warping. So I could like warp it on beats mode, and like just do all kinds of like weird things to it. Create little pulses.
Sorry.
And then like double the time and then go like, so you can create glitches, right? And you could like cut the tail and reverse it, right? Turn that into like a fill at the end of a And you could and then you could like gate that and turn that into a sound. So this is just all like just thinking about, maybe not what it sounds like right away, but what you can create to mess up with later. So we only have a couple more tracks, and I'm gonna just come back and do White Raven's Moonscape track, and it's not, Nick, it's not about 100% ownership of the track. It's about what they do. It's about what they do when they catch it on a service. So that's something I have to explain, if it's good for everyone to know, is that it doesn't matter. Like, I own a lot of my own tracks, and I get copyright strikes from using my own tracks on these streams. So it doesn't matter that I own it. It's like my song. Like SoundCloud will literally sometimes send me stuff like, your track contains blah, blah, blah by Alicia. And I'm like, oh, really? Wow. You don't say.
I actually
Has that happened?
got myself muted on Facebook once.
Yeah, it's because it's sometimes your distributor, your label has different terms, and as soon as they catch it on something, it strikes. So it has nothing to do with you owning it or not, unfortunately. It has to do with what they're going to do, and from my experience, they strike us. So I would love to hear your unreleased stuff or anything like that. We're going to play the White Raven Moonscape. Let's check it out. So, again, it's Synthwave Cyber Blade Runner night there. Retro gaming. I love it. This is a super cool track, but I think that after halfway through, it gets a little bit repetitive. So I think you need to take this next part a little bit a different direction, maybe a minimal part, right? With just like the bass pumping and like a little high arp or some percussion or something. Just because it's a great idea, but you gotta just like evolve it a little bit as the track goes on. And mix-wise, I feel like there's still a little bit of sparkle and warmth both that could be brought out. It's a little bit kind of flat still compared to how I think it would really like shine if you just get that balance right. Like a little more sparkle and a little more warmth. So like saturation on the mid-range, a little bit more with some EQ, of course, so that you don't just get like distorted or muddy. And maybe some harmonic excitement or just some more elements in that like kind of ride cymbal sort of range.
I mean, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. For me, I felt like the ARP at the start of the melody actually reminds me of something, but I cannot remember what it is at this point in time. So, no idea on that front. But I mean, it would have been nice to hear some of the other elements of your track more prominently, because the ARP kind of just dominates everything. And that's, I think, part of what's harming the replayability of the track, you know, because it feels like that's the only idea that matters in the track, even though you've got all this other cool stuff happening. It's all pushed to the side and hope for the best. When you know, you got all those little pads and other sort of my brain's not wording anymore.
It's okay, we're done. We're done. This was the last track.
This is the last one. Yeah, the shorter sort of stabbier sounds happening, and that you could do a lot more with them, I think, and give them the spotlight and have them bat from left to right a bit, and you know, sort of really catch our attention with them.
George Michael vocals over it would be amazing. I agree.
That would be interesting.
I heartily agree. Yeah, all
But,
good
I mean-
suggestions.
Keep going.
Yes, definitely keep going. Thank you so much, White Raven. Thank you, everyone, for submitting your amazing tracks. Just a little announcement. We have a couple of really cool things going on this week. And actually, it's going to be kind of nonstop because feedback is moving to Sunday this week. So tomorrow we have part 2 of Brain to MIDI, where Calvin McCormack is going to show us his EEG headset, like master plugins, cool stuff, how it works. And that shall be at 8 p.m. Central European time, which is 7 Greenwich Mean Time. And then on Saturday is our big show at Curiosibot. Please at least tune in on the stream if you cannot make it in person, because it's going to be super awesome. We have 3 live electronic acts and a DJ and some little interviews and mini workshops in between. So that's going to be going from 5 p.m. GMT to 9. So if you're just bumming around on a Saturday, just come in, hang out with us, ask some questions.
It's gonna be a lot of fun.
It's going to be a full interactive stream. And then we're doing another feedback on Sunday because I am going away for the post-Easter week. I'm going to be kind of in the mountains in a little cabin in Spain. So we're going to just do feedback on Sunday again. So it's going to be, tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday. I am not going to sleep. I am probably not going to put away my streaming gear. And I hope to see you all. We will be doing, there are Discord. If you subscribe to the Twitch, it should give you a notification, but there are event listings on our calendar, on our website. And there are Discord events in our EDM production Discord, discord.gg/EDMP, and would love to see you all. And thank you again for your amazing music. It's so nice. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Goodbye, and thank you.